Previously on my composition process. I don't really know where I'm going with this yet. In the last video we did a somewhat stream of consciousness recording of me composing a song for a picture from Donor Lens's Twitter feed. At the point of finishing, it was very much a sketch of a chord sequence, with the top notes of the chords kind of alluding to what the melody could or would do. What you're about to watch is 40 minutes or so of arrangement and production, just roughly captured and discussed on camera phone and a slightly nicer camera there in places. See you after that. Actually doing this on the phone camera because my nice camera can't focus on the text. I duplicated the first couple of chords, put it into a new region, got rid of the extra guff. You can see there's some extra notes around here, got rid of that, octave lower. And there we go. You can see verse 1, chorus 1, verse 2 is basically a copy paste for now of verse 1, half a chorus into the middle section, and then double chorus to end on our delicious F over E flat. Quantize wise, not a lot. I don't want it to be super tight, it's quite chill. It doesn't matter if you hear those chords played in more naturally. One or two things just wanted tidying up. Gone through the EPs on my various instruments and I've actually decided to stick with what we had from the other night. Seems to do the job. Probably a psychological thing because it's what I'm now used to hearing and I've decided I like it. Just so you know, for any of you Logic users, it's the default 80s FM piano setting. Body is at -3 and the bell sound I turned down because it was a bit too much. That's down all the way down at -30, so there's just a hint of it, and so really most of it's coming out of the ES2, which I think is brilliant because I actually really love the ES2. It's really ugly and old-fashioned. Once you understand synthesis, it makes total sense. Mapped out sub bass, droning under the root notes of whatever chord's playing at any given moment. Might come in handy. Tracked it in on something that's little more than a sine wave. Up here, lovely stuff. Got a tiny bit of texture to it. Amp envelope +63, nice and slow. Play the chord. Comes in nice and slowly. And I've mapped out the chords here, all just equal velocity for the moment. Here's the Vox in action while it's tracking in. So you can hear it kind of comes in and out. And I did it more regularly on the chorus here. Vox chords are in and I'm automating feedback and wet output based on what's happening. Where it gets really busy, the delay's no good because stuff overlaps, becomes discordant, so that gets chopped out. The feedback is nice, around 30%, but there are a few bits where you want it to go on even longer. Adding some piano from the piano book, which is a sort of, it's like a community run thing where people submit their own piano samples and you can download them for free and put them in your sampler of choice. They're mostly normally quite nice, really moody things. This one sounds like this. It's a Steinway concert apparently. Sounds very pretty. And then in the middle bit, right, I've put that slightly weird run in there. This bit here was meant to give the payoff. This was the kind of gravity emotional payoff thing, the reward for putting up with all the tension. So that's like all your nice release there. I just put those little melodic bits in there just if we look at that quickly. Yeah, F, E flat, E flat, A flat. So you start walking up in fourths, which always have that weird sort of suspiciousness about them. But then I bail out on that. Should have gone to the C sharp if I was sticking to the fourths, or the D flat. But that just felt a touch too dissonant. But I think it's sort of suitably weird enough. And then yeah, just come back down on a weird little whatever, like, I don't know. That was another one of those. I just sort of did it and was like, yeah, that'll do. Cool, right, back to it. One thing I always do is I take the chords, sort of copy and paste from what I've played in, quantize it dead straight, make it all the same velocity, so I've just got them there as reference, and then I can copy paste individual sections that I want to use in other areas, I mean for other sounds, whatever, like, you know, I keep one as a kind of master copy and duplicate and edit accordingly. In this case I've done that for a sound that I'm about to send out to the Jupiter. It's pretty much all of the song, but if we open up the automation in the MIDI, that's my mod wheel. I've played that in, so I let it play through once and just sat there playing the mod wheel, and took that, and then I've also manually drawn in all the cut-off filter sweeps, so we can see it starts very, very cut off and then sort of opens up for the swells, swelling with the filter and the modulation at the same time for extra expression. So there it went bright and then dull, bright and then dull. Nice and bright for that C7, remember the C7? Get it super bright. Still not crazy bright, but a lot brighter than, say, over here. At the moment the sound's coming in from this bad boy, and then yep, I'm about to track that. So remember how the electric piano here is kind of playing a lead line. That top line that's like, and then the rest's filler. So I think I'm just playing around now with some lead sounds. I've got this sort of sine wave thing going on, that's quite nice, and I think I'm going to kind of gently mirror that and then open it up and make more of it over the chorus, where there wasn't an obvious tangible melody line, and I don't think I expressed it very well in the video, but I was hearing a thing that was sort of like yeah. So I'm just I've set the other camera up just to capture a little bit of that for you, so that you can kind of see what I mean when I say I get a rough idea, I put the chords in, I put the groove on, and I noodle, I kind of tinker about. So it's going to be rough, there's going to be loads of bum notes, and it's going to be sloppy, and feeling through things and following my fingers a little bit. So then that melody line kind of comes in here. really weird. I'll probably fumble something in and then really tidy that up in MIDI to make it sound flashy. Then I don't know. I didn't track that, I didn't tape that, I don't think I'll capture record it. That's kind of what I mean when I talk about going through the motions and just smashing away at stuff. I'll do that 3 or 4 times. Get to a point where it's like something starts to solidify and form. I definitely think I've got that thing with the chorus. That's like, that feels quite good. I might not even use this patch. I want something very round, very simple. I've just gone for a sine wave with a big delay on it. Sine waves are very hard to mix with actually because there's just nothing there, there's no information. But if you can put a bit chorus and a bit of delay on it, you can kind of catch it, maybe even a touch of saturation. This is a nice particular patch because there's like no, the attack is at 0, so sometimes it actually like clicks when it starts and stops. You actually get a click where the oscillator isn't crossing 0 at the point of initiation, so you know, a bit of like dirt, but that's useful because it actually gives us something to latch onto in the mix. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get back to it and keep playing. Before I go any further with the lead, I've laid down the idea kind of in my head, and I think I'm going to worry about that tomorrow. Now this pad here, this sort of Dream Keys, I've used this quite a lot. It's a great kind of it's a lovely kind of breathy texture stuff. This patch is made up of 3 different sounds. The FX37 will be a weird noise that's probably got some LFO modulations on it. If we isolate that, you can hear that. There's like a sine wave on a weird LFO being triggered in amongst that. We'll lose that. And number 1, that's a Vox pad. That's probably coming off like a JV 1080 style PCM waveform. And then that's a very D50, isn't it? A very Roland D50 sound. I think I'm going to use that just as, you know how on other tracks I talked about how I use a bell, just mirror top line stuff. I'm just going to do it with this, and I might even do it a bit lower. Because I think the general vibe of this track needs to be quite... I don't want to get too carried away putting lots of pretty bright things in, because I think it needs to be quite... I don't want to use the word vaporwave, but certainly to have that sort of kind of very chill, very slightly lo-fi, very understated. So it's something like just down low, just quite staccato. I mean, EQ out the bass as well, so it doesn't clash with. Oh, yeah, I'll go there. Okay, I've just smashed in those notes. I just drew them in. So you get that kind of vibe here in the first verse. It's very low. It follows what's going on with the melody. I go up there. Bum, bum, bum. I go up there because it just went so low, it became a bit muddy, and it's a nice colour it added to things. So that's very much mirroring that kind of melody line that's being picked out by the electric piano. I went up to a different note there just to add some colour, because we then have that note there. For the chorus, I just go high and I just mirror like the significant notes out of the chords. So we got, I know that that's going to work when I'm playing that melody over the top. That will just fit and work. Or similar thing for that the mid section here. Again, picking out key notes from the chords. Very little. Not a lot at all. by the time it's recorded in, scoop out some of the mid-range body and you throw it into the reverb and probably slap a delay on it as well, or certainly automate a delay to come in where there's less information, where there's less notes playing, where there's a lot together, the delay might get messy. You see how this is going to work in tandem with the Vox. Now at the moment these are pan central still, and I was kind of thinking I'd have the FM piano out on one a bit to the left and the acoustic piano a bit to the right in equal measure, because they very much kind of do a call and response thing throughout the verses, and then they're both just kind of holding the chords for the choruses. And I had that centered, but I might put that out maybe one side and the Jupiter with the other. So attracting that bow pad, what I found was, because it's playing basically mirroring the melody line that the FM piano is playing, it didn't make sense to put it on the same side as the FM piano, because otherwise the melody gets too lopsided. FM piano is coming out of the left, and then that's accented by the bells on the right. Christian Sand Concert Steinway is over on the right, and then that's got the Vox chords just kind of breathing gently over the top of them. Now the pianos are both sidechaining against the kick, so they just pulse every time the kick plays, whereas the Vox chords and the bell pad I think are going on 4/4. Yeah, they're pumping on 4/4. Just these alone are working quite nicely actually here. Pretty much the first pad I came across, and it's this bad boy here. It's really simple, just let the pad do all the work. Play those simple notes. In places they complement the chord changes, in other places they complement the rhythm. So you can see very long notes that span several bars, and then if I slide along, we're starting to kind of have some shorter notes that kind of follow the rhythm of the melody, and it sounds like this on its own. And that works very nicely over the intro. That's just like a C, like the high C off the chord, and then to an F. I've got it pumping against a 4/4 sidechain. It just sits up into the reverb, but it's not too bright. Adds some of that melancholy I was talking about. I've taken some top end out of the piano as well. And then I have it mirrored just a few notes of the melody line, so that high C. So it's just sitting up there. It's a very Vangelis-y type pad. Sounds very pretty, I think. Tidied up some drums this morning, copy, paste, make variants, put some extra fills in, some shakery bits for chorus, added some toms. This drum preset that I made myself here with these lo-fi count samples doesn't have any toms. I pulled in some toms from elsewhere from a separate preset, programmed them in, bounced them in place, and then shifted that track up into that drum kit's bus, made them a bit more dirty sounding, just took the top end out. Green chimes, there you go, love me some chimes. Started with a little bit of choppity chop, as you can see there, bits and pieces, and most notably with those big really long G7 over Cs on the middle section here. I'm pulling all the drums out. Just letting that hang. Atmosphere. I'll probably put some more colours in there with some pads. So yeah, it's taking shape. I'm going to keep playing with some pads. Back in Padtown, you can see everything here is octave apart. I've dialed in a pad on the Jupiter that single notes, it's layered. There's sort of vocally thing and a filtered out sawtooth, a really rapid LFO, which isn't overly noticeable when you play one note because it's like doing amplitude modulation super fast, like helicopter, like, but that's relative to the pitch, so you do notice it because they start to like drift in and out of sync or even alias when you play multiple notes. So I don't know if the camera mic will pick that up, but so by just setting them out an octave apart, you get this nice kind of weird flutter very subtly in the tone, which is a bit like, you know, when you've got a fan and you make a sound on one side and you're listening on the other, and it's got that really fast choppy effect to it. It's like that's nested within that tone. And on the picture that we're scoring to, there's a picture of an air conditioner which kind of poking around and dialed that LFO in, and then it made me think of fans and air conditioning, and that's made me think I might go and see if I can sleuth air conditioner sound effect off the internet. Found myself an air conditioner sound effect on the interwebs. It's not quite white noisy, but it's almost white noise. It's just occurred to me the bass was put in as a placeholder, and much like the Logic preset of FM 80s electric piano, whatever, I grew to like it enough to keep it. And I think that's fair to say of the bass, certainly for the verses, where I think having that very understated, little more than a sine wave type tonality works. But once you hit the choruses, maintaining that underpinning of the chord progression with the root note isn't doing it for me. I think we can put more low end movement in there. So I've got this patch here, which won't translate through the phone, but it's got some fat bottom end. And it's just got that little bit of colour at the top, at the start of the note. You know, you hear the filters open and then the envelope closes on it. And I'm just going to noodle and kind of quickly find some kind of bass thing that puts more movement in. Interestingly, when you play like this, it feels like E flat is the first chord. The F actually sounds a little bit odd, but we're going from that F down to that E. So we'll just kind of flip past the F, something like that. Let's see. And so where it goes down to that E flat, because the first time it goes F to E, A flat, B flat, F to E flat, A flat, B flat, so bum, 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 bum. I'm riding that on, you're seeing the A flat, but I'm doing the pitch bend and mod. Yeah. space, right? I talk about carving space. Before it was just boom. This time I'm just punctuating it a bit, so we're shifting the rhythm of the melodic harmonic stuff as well as the drums and percussion. Everything's shifting up and changing its pattern or its meter. There's a different philosophy for the chorus as there is for the verses, and that helps the chorus stand out. That helps give the chorus a big dynamic lift. Right, so I've tracked the bass, and I thought I'd just quickly show you a couple of bits of interest with the MIDI. You often get this on lots of synth patches where the envelope filter is triggered by note on, but if you overlap the notes, it doesn't reset the envelope trigger. Normally it comes under like a re-trigger. You can use that to your advantage to kind of make more or less overstate or understate. See here where it goes ba-da-da, I'm overlapping. I've not overlapped from the third note to the fourth note, so you get that, you get the squelch on the first note and then you get it on the fourth note. Now I always aim to play it in as close to that as possible. There's no way I can play that neatly and meticulously, obviously. Being bass, being rock solid at the bottom and tied to the drums, yes, of course I've quantized it, and I basically go through and I just double check the end of the notes as well. I'm coming off the notes or slurring the notes, should we say, in the way to get the best out of the envelope. Wherever I'm not, I'll just fix it and edit it. And also that's something else you can mix up to add variety. So you might have it go wow in one place, but in another place you might have it go wow wow wow. So you see, I let that top note there squelch because it just kind of, it's a bit different, right? Grace notes as well, so important, especially on a sound like this, because you overlap there, so you get the squelchiness on the grace note and then just the solid oomph and the body from the long held note after that, which I always think is quite interesting. Listen again. So yeah, and then I've done that over the choruses, midsection, dressed that bit up a bit. And I find that's instantly made the piano sit in the mix because I've just given it space. Rather than there being a long held note in this area, just dropping something there for like a beat and a half and doing a little, you know, it gives the piano room to breathe. And again, that if you think where that piano chord comes, it comes where I've stopped on the bass here. That's just not even intentional. That's just kind of, you know, you hear it in intuition and you're just vibing, right? I might, I mean it's a bit busy there, but I might do a walk here. Yeah, I think I will. I'll overdub a bit of a walk in that bit there, or a little counterpoint, just bounce between the root and fifth. A bit like I did there. Now these long notes, I'm putting them in on purpose because I'm going to fade them out. And then back into it. Alright, back to it. So here, I've pulled that note back to there to give myself 1, 2, 3 and a bit bar, 3 and a bit beats to play with, and I added this. Whereas before that was just a long held note, so that's more interesting. And what that does, what that is just it's a minor 7 chord on the F, and I'm just shooting off the F, the 4th, which is the B flat, dum 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 dum, overshooting the F up there. So it's like rocking up an octave, but you overshoot it onto the 9th of the chord, which is a really melodic, pretty interval. So you shoot up to the 9th, overshoot, and then rock back onto where you meant to land in the first place, and you make sure you catch that with a grace note. So you still tease a bit of the F up to the ninth and then back there, and do that all the time. Listen to my other music, you'll hear me use this little trick in the bass a lot. I've kind of borrowed, been inspired, nicked, whatever you want to say. I've pinched that idea from how the bass opens on So What on Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Ba-doom, ba-doom, doom, doom. Yeah, it just rocks up to the ninth and then down again. Doom, just, yeah, it works. It's nice. So there's a little trick for you. Right, it's been a couple days and I haven't looked at the track or honestly even thought about it. Been very busy with other things, which is really good. It just gives you objectivity and perspective, and the distance and space you need sometimes to come back to something with a much more critical ear, less thinking about the composition and more thinking about the arrangement and production, as if it's someone else's composition that's been handed to you to sort out, detaching a certain degree of emotion. So let's have a look at a couple of bits I've just done quickly since opening the project. A little like 1 beat drop just before it all kicks. So stuff builds. To really, and I don't do this very often, but to really send it, to really make that beginning bit pop. I've actually got my reverb here so I can automate it, and then I automate a mute. This is something I didn't mention before on my previous mix breakdown videos, but I probably should have done. Wherever I'm drawing automation on a like a bus track that doesn't actually contain any audio or MIDI regions themselves, I still just, using the pencil tool, just draw in a blank region behind it, so that if I want to move it, I just grab the whole region, and then, do you want to move the reverb? Why, yes I do, bop, and then it moves it, okay? Slight panic, because you can see the bass is labelled bass 0706, cut minus 30. I pulled that patch up and adjusted the cut off to match, and it didn't match. I think, I quickly scrolled through and I reckon it's 708, so... Right, so I've relabeled it. The reason I've pulled it up is that I'm going to track it again. This time, I've already made the note here, I'm going to knock 20 off the resonance as well, because there's a weird frequency that I'm just not feeling. I don't know if it'll come through on the mic, but... It's like a byproduct of the filter being enveloped with a reasonably high resonance. There's just a funny kind of note that comes out of the tone, and I think that's one of the things that's causing me a bit of beef with this chorus, because really the thickness in the mid-range isn't a problem until we get to the chorus with the different bass sound, although I've like level matched it so it's about the same in terms of overall body and depth and EQ like tonality. The other thing was that you can see I've knocked 3 dB off the electric piano as well, which is helping. But I'm going to retrack the bass and then just keep chipping away at odd little bits. Right, I think I've fixed the bloatiness. There was the issue with the bass. That was unquestionable. That is now fixed. But it was on the acoustic piano sound. That's how the sound is now. And of course, what frequency was causing the problem? I've tracked the lead synth for the first chorus. Did a big fat glissando into it. See, there's pitch bends and loads of modulation going on in the whatever that bit's called. MIDI automation nowadays. Need to spice it up. Verse 2 needs something. I'm gonna set it way back in the mix, maybe even like up behind the piano and far into the reverb for this bit. Countering the lead on fourths and thirds, whatever was working. I think it's thirds actually. And then for the breakdown chorus, I'll track it. Don't know if I'll use it yet. I might set it way back in the mix and just have it kind of chill out up the back in the reverb. I've also played it a little more punctuated this time, so just these gaps between the notes are a touch bigger, so it's a little more staccato would be the formal terminology. And just in case you're wondering, like, no way did I do that in one take. That's pieced together in 3 takes. Coming off this big bend here, I got as far as big pitch bend on that. I got as far as there, and then I completely like fell over my own fingers. That whole blah la la da la da la, I got that bit in and then just tightened it up in the MIDI. Notice I'm letting the notes overlap so the portamento does its thing, and then I basically played in, I think I played in that bit next, and then again I got to the end of that and was like, ugh, tripped out because it's hectic trying to, and my hands are really cold. If I'm going to shred like this much and try and really pull this stuff off like accurately, I do need to warm up. I'm not 21 anymore. I can't just do it on command. Like, I need to practice for about an hour or so and really get limbered up, which obviously I'm not, because I've just been watching One Division and then some Run DMC documentaries on BBC4. But what is interesting about this is that because this is over that nice like little bit of harmonic modulation, to use the proper term, where we basically break out of the key signature, we momentarily, in terms of this improvisation, we drift up into the B flat minor pentatonic. Yeah, that B flat blues scale for the win. Anything like this, work off the blues scale. If in doubt, do things with the blues scale, get fluid with the blues scale, learn it in every key, and you'll just be improvising till the cows come home. And over time you grow in confidence to incorporate some of the slightly bizarre notes that live outside the blues scale for extra like melodic emphasis. 1, 2, 3, yeah, add the 9 and the 6 into the blues scale, and it's basically becomes a minor scale. But it's nice to improvise on. It can be very melodic. Just don't overuse the 9 and the 6. Go to them sparingly, and they sound really clever when they're not. They're just the 9 and the 6. Anyway, so the middle 8 or middle 16. Conscious not to overcrowd things too much. I've been quite minimal on this first part. I've got mixed feelings about it at this stage. I'll probably push it back behind the piano and keep the piano as the primary source of melody there, and let the reverb and the delay tails just work some magic behind the piano keys, hopefully. And then big long note, like with the bass, I've left it in there so that I can cut it and fade it out. Little bit more stuff going on there. I might extend that bass note all the way, actually. Yeah, I mean that note. And then final chorus. This is the same as the first one, but an octave higher. And then I dress it up at the end of the first of the 2 repeats, and the second time just kind of noodle around. Still calling back that melody line at the end of the phrase there. And again. First things to talk about on the double chorus. First time chorus is how the listener expects it, how they remember it. On the repeat, you can't just repeat it again without doing something, because that's boring. Little things like chorus melody always starts on the E flat, so for this solo bit I actually start it on a D flat, which is a tone away. It's close, but it's not the same. So there we start on a tone below what the listener expects, and then we sort of swing past the 9 down there, and also, you know, obviously there's a bit more happening in terms of the melodic rhythm compared to what it conventionally does. And this do-do-do-do-do is just like what we've been hearing before. You'll notice I'm throwing in lots of sort of swings on the pitch bends and the modulations and stuff, just to, I mean, well, that's just, basically I played it in and just tidied up the start and ends of the notes so it wasn't too off the beat. And again, start on the D flat again, just to kind of hammer home that we're doing things a little bit differently on this one. But you've got that octave jump off that previous note, which with the glide of the synth gives you a really nice pickup. And that one little slightly distinctive note there, coming in off the A flat. There you go. We've got that coming in off the A flat onto the G natural, kind of in E flat minor, but we've been flirting so much with key breaks by this stage in the song, throwing in things that are out of key. Grace noting, if that's the term, briefly flirting with that, you know, it's a kind of thing you'd find in blues and that sort of stuff. You know, it's one G natural in amongst all this run, yet it jumps out and goes, hey, look at me, and it's happy because it's a major interval off the E flat where it goes next, and yeah, so just tiny little nudges like that can make the world of difference, really. And then this thing, don't for 1 second think I played that in G's. I did one octave, most of it with my right hand, and finished off with like 1 or 2 fingers on my left hand, and then copied and pasted that down. So, but I'm not sure if I want to keep that yet. I did try a few up and down things, but I don't know, man, none of them really sounded any good. I think my idea of having lots of sweepy things, and also I think that might just be a bit too much, a bit too intense. It's feeling like it's ending a bit too big for what I was imagining. I think I'm getting carried away. So I'll throw it all in and then probably cut half of it out again. Well, it looks like Delay Tales to the rescue. They've sorted out the ending, I think. I kept that big run in at the end, but I faded out so that the fade out ends as the run ends. I then copy and pasted that last couple of bars from the solo an octave lower and dialed down the velocities on them so they're sort of more bluey green and there's less like angry loud notes, and then stuck that in the fade out on a duplicate track with the same settings I just cooked up. I'll probably group them on a bus and then transfer the plugs to the bus, do it the sensible, tidy way, and I'll work on that fade out. Okay, a few things to note on playback in the morning, you know, with fresh ears, and I've just hacked out bits here in the first verse. It was just all a bit much. Pushed some things back in the mix slightly and just completely chopped things away in places. I've added Isabel, apparently, on the drums there, just playing some congas. Other than address the mix and bed in the lead a bit more and make some few tweaks to some automation, there's quite a lot going on in different places, especially as we sort of push and pull things in and out of the reverb and brighten and soften things, that sort of stuff. And then lastly, as I was going to sleep, I was thinking to myself, it just wants something to give it an old sound or an older sound, or if you think about, it's not a vaporwave track, but I am kind of feeling quite inspired by the vaporwave aesthetic. So if we think about the lo-fi thing and the chill thing, and they're so often sampling old records that would have nice orchestras on them, so I did think, maybe I should just try some strings, see if I can do something there. And I've just sketched out some strings here in the MIDI. Essentially, it's just kind of playing like 2-note intervals, like 4ths and 5ths or 6ths apart. So you've got that blend of kind of a touch of tension with a 4, the resoluteness of the 5, and a touch of ambiguity with the 6. So that's kind of why I'm opting for those sorts of intervals. But I just want to draw your attention to notice that I start them out quite spaced out, and then I bring them in closer together for the next one. Spaced out, closer together. Closer together, spaced out. So rather than just it being like the same kind of intervals stepping up and down, you've got this kind of open, tightening, opening, tightening, or tightening and then opening thing. And here, this is something to be mindful of. If you're doing something like this with string sounds and you want it to still remain quite realistic sounding, if you're moving from a two strings to 3 strings, like I've done here, so I've got a kind of a low note and a high note, but here I've actually got 3 notes. Now, in all honesty, I'm just playing this in and kind of feeling it through as I go, a couple of takes and all that. But those middle additional notes, I went in with the MIDI and I quietened them. I don't know how well you're picking up the colours on the phone camera here. It's a bit overexposed, isn't it? But yeah, it's a much paler blue. In other words, it's a much quieter note. So it's in there, but it's not adding to the like thickness of the dynamic, or the size of the dynamic, I should stress. Also, you'll notice that aside from like the very first notes at the start of the passage, and these chords that very much stab the staccato punctuated bits at the end of that passage, not quantized at all. Twofold. One, the sound has a slightly slow attack on it, so you naturally, as the player, when you're playing it in, you kind of just give it a touch before it's meant to start, because your ears and your fingers are kind of vibing with the attack on that particular patch. And the particular patch in question is from the Jupiter. It's something that blended together. You can ignore layer 4 there, that was never in the sound, but layer 2 was, and that's based on a Jupiter 8 string sound. But I took that out and I've left it just on the cello and the violin, and you can see here it says SNAC. That stands for Supernatural Acoustic. If you read the article on my blog about this keyboard, you'll learn that it's got something called the Supernatural Engine, which is just really, really high quality sort of emulation and samples, and it analyzes the way you play. In other words, it's analyzing the MIDI input overlaps and things to give you the true nuances of the actual instrument. So if I solo these in isolation, they should hopefully sound quite nice, even through the mic on the... So you can hear it's quite wooden, it's quite woody, and you'll notice little things like this where I'm doing big jumps. Try and input it or edit it afterwards to think how an actual violinist or cellist would play this part, because you make a big jump like that is going to come with a dynamic increase. So you've got to make sure it pops like it would. Now, it still sounds a little bit like note on, note off, note on, note off. But once that's in the mix and you've tweaked it with the EQ, and most importantly, thrown it back into the reverb, that will help soften those note transitions, and it should hopefully feel like there's a nice little sort of 2 or 3 part string section added to this mix. And I'll just nest that in to sit underneath all the solo stuff that's going on. Big old swell at the end of them. And that's the other thing as well, using loads and loads of modulation wheel to really make sure you're getting out of the notes, out of that patch, as much kind of expression and realism as possible, and not having it sound like a plinky plonk general MIDI. Just finessing the overall tone of things. So I've got some stuff going on the master bus now, the usual kind of stuff. I've added the Izotope Vinyl. This was a free plugin from Izotope a while ago. I don't know if it's still free or not. It's a nice coloration, make it dirty, make it old kind of plugin. I've dialed in a tiny bit of warp depth, so there's just a tiny bit of up and down in the overall kind of tuning, and the more wear there is, the more it's like you've worn out your vinyl and you've listened to it too much, and you've taken all the tops and bottoms out, the peaks and troughs in the groove. So it's there, but it's less detailed. It's the equivalent of just sucking in the filters basically. And you can see I've automated that at the beginning to be at 50% and then to go away for when the beat kicks, and then at the end I just bring the wear back in for the fade out. I'll put a volume fade out on that as well when I'm done. Yeah, carrying on. I spent a bit of time after that just finessing the mix, and then I ran the finished track through some mastering software just to sweeten it slightly, and mainly to get the loudness up to a sort of competitive level with commercial releases. A few reflections on where things are at the end. I think it's a touch too energetic. I think I could have made it a touch calmer. I think that's just a characteristic of what I tend to do. My music tends to be a bit peppy, a bit energetic and lively, and sometimes I struggle to rein that in, but there we go. It's not the end of the world. I think arrangement-wise, a soft-strung instrument like a nylon string acoustic could have gone a long way to putting some character in there that was lacking. I found the sine wave very hard to mix. I always do. I sort of kicked myself halfway through. I was like, why did I decide to do a sine wave? Because they're just a hassle, because there's no information in a sine wave. If you're going to use a sine wave, you've really got to think about it and arrange around that, whereas I'd kind of put so much stuff in without really considering how the sine wave would nest in there. But I'd made my mind up early on that I wanted a sine wave, so with everything finished and done, I'm not reopening the project, but there are two pads, one panned a bit left, one panned a bit right, and I've realised now that actually I should have had them the other way round. But I mean, like, crikey, that's hardly the end of the world. And more time and a budget, I'd put horns on that. I would. I'd have some soft trombones come in at the bridge, some really soft mellow horns, real horns. I would probably ditch the sine wave and used a melancholy trumpet of some sort. You know, had the trumpet player deliver it with a real somberness, not too bright and sparkly. And I think that ties back to the Burt Bacharach factor. Yeah, I think some soft horns along with the strings would have just really popped. But anyway, let's have a listen. Do you enjoy that? As the creator, I'm reasonably pleased, aside from the aforementioned issues to do with the arrangement, a few little gripes with the mix. It's not going to set the world on fire, I'm not going to have a Christmas #1 with it, but that's alright. For the sake of this exercise and the video and helping to demonstrate the kind of processes I go through when I'm composing, I think it's relatively successful. I think it's reflective. So Donor Lens, whilst every composition is its own entity and there's always some unique factor in everything, what you've just watched is fairly reflective of what I would do typically when writing. And you know, I'd say 50 to 60% of the time I go in with chords and let the chords dictate what the bass and what the melody end up doing. If it's not the chords, then it's the bass line first. Very rare occasions does the melody come first. I don't procrastinate too much, I kind of just make a decision and then run with it, let the chips fall where they may, sort of thing. And this ties in with a slightly dreamy, hippie-ish kind of notion that I tend to have, which is that the music I make at any point in time is just a reflection of creatively where my head's at that time, that day, that week, or that month, whatever. And I'm pretty unapologetic about that. It's like, okay, look, here's the thing I've made, bosh, out it goes. And then you look through my releases on Bandcamp and you'll see that the styles jump around a lot, and it's because one month I'll be totally into this style of thing, and then in quite a fickle way I'll decide I want to do something completely different and go off and do it. It probably, in the grand scheme of things, hurts my brand, if you like. Another point on the not procrastinating too much. You can always make something better, and if you're not prepared to release something until it's perfect, you're probably never going to release it, because who's to say what's perfect, right? What's perfect to you 10 years ago is not perfect to you now. Get it done, ship it, move on to the next thing. Just aim to make the next thing better than the last thing. The song will have its own video on YouTube, it'll go up on Bandcamp for Name Your Price, it will go on Spotify and all that jazz, links below, blah de blah. Right, cool. Stay safe out there, and happy music making.